Welcome to a list of islands, so strange that if someone described them to you, you'd assume they were made up. Every island here is unusual for a very specific reason, whether because of how it formed, what lives there, or what humans did to it. As the list goes on, each island becomes more and more bizarre, or unique. The final island on this list may be the most restricted place on the planet, for a very specific reason. Number 3 is a definition of human-made strangeness, frozen in the form of an island. Island number 5 emerged out of the ocean at a time when Donald Trump was still in high school. And number 9 is a former chemical weapons facility that somehow turned into a rabbit-filled tourist attraction. So yeah, things will get pretty weird, pretty fast. But let's start with number 1, an island that barely looks real at all. A narrow spine of rock rising almost vertically from the ocean, so extreme that for decades it was considered impossible to climb, standing alone in open water like a geological mistake that somehow survived. Ball's Pyramid is located in the Tasman Sea, about 20 kilometers south of Niihau Island, off the east coast of Australia. From a distance, it barely looks like an island at all. It's a narrow spine of rock rising abruptly from deep ocean water, with no beach, no flat ground, and no obvious place for anything to survive. Geologically, Ball's Pyramid is what's left of an ancient volcano. Over millions of years, wave erosion stripped away the softer material until only the hard volcanic core remained. The result is a steep, jagged sea stack that is almost vertical for much of its height. For most of its recorded history, people considered it unclimbable. There's no natural landing point, the rock is exposed and unstable, and the entire feature is battered constantly by wind and sea spray. The first successful ascent didn't happen until 1965, and even today, it takes serious technical climbing to reach the top. But the most surprising part is what scientists found living there. In the early 2000s, researchers discovered a tiny surviving population of the Lord Howe Island stick insect on Ball's Pyramid. The species had been considered extinct since the 1920s, after invasive rats wiped it out on nearby Lord Howe Island. Yet on this near-vertical rock, a remnant population had somehow survived in isolation. That discovery led to a captive breeding program, and there has been long-term hope that the species could eventually be reintroduced to Lord Howe Island itself. Ball's Pyramid earns its place at the start of this list because it combines two things that shouldn't go together: an island with an almost impossible shape and a species that survived there when the world thought it was gone. From a rock where almost nothing should exist, we move to an island where life does the exact opposite. This next place looks ordinary on a map, but once a year, the entire island shuts down, not because of weather, war, or disaster, but because millions of animals take over the roads, towns, and forests at the same time. What happens here is so overwhelming that humans simply have to get out of the way. This is island number 2. Christmas Island is an Australian territory in the Indian Ocean, located south of Java and far from the Australian mainland. On the surface, it looks like a fairly ordinary tropical island, forested, coastal, and sparsely populated. What makes it strange is the sheer scale of life that moves across it every year. Christmas Island is home to an estimated 40 to 50 million red crabs, and once a year, nearly the entire population migrates at the same time. As the wet season begins, the crabs leave the forest and move toward the ocean to spawn. The migration is so massive that it completely takes over the island. Roads are closed, fences are installed, and traffic is rerouted. In some areas, the ground appears to move as the crabs pour across it in dense waves. Humans don't control the schedule. The crabs do. This behavior exists because Christmas Island has almost no natural predators for the crabs. Over time, they evolved in isolation, multiplying into one of the largest land crab populations on Earth. The island's steep limestone terrain and rainforests provide ideal shelter, while the surrounding ocean completes their life cycle. Christmas Island earns its place on this list because for part of every year, human infrastructure simply stops functioning, replaced by one of the largest synchronized animal movements on the planet. From an island where nature completely takes over, we move to a place where humans once pushed density to an extreme, and then vanished almost overnight. This next island wasn't shaped to be strange by geology or wildlife, but by people. At its peak, it was one of the most crowded places on Earth. Today, it's completely empty. This is island number 3. Hashima Island lies just off the coast of Nagasaki, Japan. It's a small flat piece of land surrounded by concrete seawalls, built up so densely that from a distance it looks more like a battleship than an island, which is how it earned its nickname Gunkanjima, or Battleship Island. The island's story is entirely human-made. In the late 19th century, coal was discovered beneath the seabed here, and Mitsubishi Corporation began building housing directly on the rock. Over time, the island was expanded with reclaimed land and filled almost completely with reinforced concrete apartment blocks. By the 1950s, Hashima reached its peak. More than 5,000 people lived on an island barely a few hundred meters long, giving it one of the highest population densities ever recorded anywhere on Earth. There were schools, shops, a hospital, bathhouses, even a cinema, all stacked vertically on a single slab of rock. Life on Hashima was tightly controlled and physically confined. There was no soil, no trees, and no open land. Children grew up surrounded entirely by concrete, with the ocean visible from almost everywhere but rarely accessible. The island was abandoned abruptly in 1974 when Japan transitioned away from coal. Within months, every resident left. Furniture, appliances, and personal belongings were simply left behind. With no maintenance, the buildings began to decay rapidly under constant exposure to salt air and typhoons. For decades, Hashima was completely off-limits due to safety concerns. Today, only small sections are accessible on guided tours, while most of the island remains a collapsing concrete shell, a frozen snapshot of industrial ambition pushed to its absolute limit. From an island shaped entirely by human ambition, we move to a place that should be untouched. The next island is remote, uninhabited, and legally protected, yet it holds one of the most disturbing environmental records on the planet. Nothing permanent has ever lived here, and almost no one ever visits. And still, it's been profoundly altered. This is island number 4. Henderson Island is part of the remote Pitcairn Islands group in the South Pacific, thousands of kilometers from any major landmass. It's a raised coral island with steep limestone cliffs, dense vegetation, and no permanent freshwater sources, which is one of the reasons it has never supported a lasting human settlement. On paper, Henderson Island is one of the most pristine places on Earth. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, legally protected, uninhabited, and rarely visited. There are no towns, no roads, and no industry of any kind. What makes it strange is what researchers found covering its beaches. Despite its isolation, Henderson Island has been identified as having one of the highest concentrations of plastic waste anywhere in the world. Millions of pieces of debris, bottles, containers, fishing gear, and fragments broken down by the sun have accumulated there, carried in by ocean currents from across the Pacific. Scientific surveys have documented plastic buried beneath the sand, tangled in vegetation, and embedded deep into the island's interior. Much of it comes from thousands of kilometers away, proving that even the most remote islands on the planet are not isolated from human impact. Henderson Island is also home to several endemic species found nowhere else on Earth, including birds and insects that evolved in complete isolation. That makes the pollution problem especially serious, as these species have no defenses against synthetic materials entering their environment. Henderson Island is unsettling because it looks untouched, yet it quietly records the global reach of human waste in a place where no one lives at all. From an island that was altered without anyone ever living there, we move to a place that didn't exist at all until very recently. The next island is one of the few on Earth whose birth was witnessed, filmed, and studied in real time, emerging violently from the ocean and then sealed off from the world. Nothing was brought here on purpose. Everything that lives on it arrived by chance. This is island number 5. Surtsey lies off the southern coast of Iceland in the North Atlantic, where the Mid-Atlantic Ridge cuts directly through the ocean. Unlike most islands, Surtsey has an exact birth date. In November 1963, a volcanic eruption broke through the seafloor and continued for nearly 4 years. Lava, ash, and steam built an entirely new island above the surface, growing large enough to be seen from the mainland. By the time the eruption ended in 1967, Surtsey had become one of the youngest islands on Earth. From the beginning, Iceland made an unusual decision. The island was closed to the public and strictly protected. Scientists wanted to observe how life establishes itself from nothing, without any human interference. Since then, every plant, insect, and bird that has appeared on Surtsey arrived on its own. Seeds were carried by wind, birds, or ocean currents. Insects arrived on driftwood. Birds nested, died, and enriched the soil, slowly allowing more complex life to take hold. At the same time, the island has been shrinking. Waves and storms constantly erode its soft volcanic rock, slowly reshaping its coastline. Scientists track both processes, growth of life and loss of land, year after year. Surtsey is strange because it's not just an island, but a controlled scientific experiment on a geographic scale, showing how land is born, how ecosystems begin, and how quickly the ocean tries to erase them again. From an island created in full view of the modern world, we move to a place that has deliberately stayed out of it. The next island sits in plain sight, close to popular tourist destinations. Yet almost no one is allowed to go there. Its isolation isn't caused by geography or danger, but by a decision to keep it that way. This is island number 6. Niihau is a small island in the Hawaiian archipelago, located just west of Kauai, and it sits well within United States territory. From the air, it looks dry, quiet, and unremarkable. But what makes Niihau unusual has nothing to do with its shape. The island is privately owned and has been deliberately closed off from the modern world for more than a century. While the rest of Hawaii developed into a major tourist destination, Niihau went in the opposite direction. Access is tightly controlled, and only invited guests or residents are allowed to land. A small native Hawaiian population still lives on the island, maintaining traditional lifestyles with limited electricity, limited infrastructure, and Hawaiian as the primary spoken language. Cars, hotels, and large-scale development were never introduced. The island was purchased from King Kamehameha IV in 1864 for $10,000 by Elizabeth Sinclair. Her descendants, the Robinson family, continue to own and manage it as a cultural preservation site. To preserve native Hawaiian culture, the island is generally off-limits to outsiders. Only the Robinson family, their invited guests, and the island's native Hawaiian residents are allowed to step foot on most of the island. During World War II, Niihau briefly became part of the aftermath of the attack on Pearl Harbor, when a Japanese fighter pilot crash-landed on the island. The local community was so isolated that news of the attack hadn't reached them yet. What followed was a days-long confrontation, later known as the Niihau incident, highlighting just how disconnected the island was from the outside world, even during a major global event. From an island sealed off to protect culture and tradition, we move to a place restricted for a very different reason. The next island is closed to the public not because of history or preservation, but because setting foot there could be fatal within minutes. It's small, isolated, and almost completely overtaken by a single species. This is island number 7. Ilha de Queimada Grande lies off the coast of Brazil, about 30 kilometers from São Paulo state, in the Atlantic Ocean. It's small, steep, and densely forested, and officially closed to the public. What makes the island extraordinary is what dominates it. Queimada Grande is home to one of the highest concentrations of venomous snakes anywhere on Earth. The golden lancehead viper evolved here in complete isolation after rising sea levels cut the island off from the mainland. With no land predators and limited food, the snakes adapted to hunt birds, developing venom significantly more potent than that of their mainland relatives. In some areas, snakes can be found across nearly every surface, on the ground, in trees, and among rocks, making movement across the island extremely dangerous. Because of this, the Brazilian government has banned civilian access entirely. Only military personnel and scientific researchers with special permission are allowed to land. Historically, the danger wasn't theoretical. Lighthouse keepers once stationed on the island were eventually removed after repeated incidents involving snake bites. The lighthouse was later automated, eliminating the need for permanent human presence. In recent years, the island has drawn renewed attention online. Several videos have circulated claiming to show YouTubers and content creators visiting Queimada Grande. Brazilian authorities have stated that any such landings are illegal, and some footage appears to be filmed from boats offshore or during brief unauthorized visits. Ilha de Queimada Grande stands out because it shows how isolation can drive evolution to an extreme, turning an entire island into a place humans are simply not meant to enter. From an island where danger comes from what lives on the land, we move to a place where the land itself refuses to stay still. The next island isn't hostile because of predators or restrictions, but because it's constantly shifting, reshaping itself under wind and waves. It looks fragile, temporary, yet it's been here for centuries. This is island number 8. Sable Island lies in the North Atlantic, about 300 kilometers off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada. Unlike the other islands on this list, it isn't solid rock. It's a long, narrow crescent made almost entirely of sand, sitting just above sea level. What makes Sable Island unusual is that it's constantly moving. Wind, waves, and powerful ocean currents reshape the island year after year. Its size and position change over time, with dunes shifting, coastlines retreating, and sections of land disappearing while others reform elsewhere. There are no cliffs, no stable foundation, just sand held together by vegetation and chance. Despite this instability, Sable Island has existed for centuries. It became infamous during the Age of Sail, earning the nickname the Graveyard of the Atlantic. More than 300 shipwrecks are believed to have occurred in the surrounding waters, as vessels ran aground in fog or storms, unable to see the low-lying land until it was too late. Against all odds, the island supports life. A population of wild horses roams freely across the dunes, descended from animals introduced centuries ago. There are also seals, seabirds, and specialized plants adapted to survive in poor soil and constant exposure to salt and wind. Today, access to Sable Island is tightly controlled by the Canadian government. Only researchers and approved visitors are allowed to land, both to protect the fragile ecosystem and to limit human impact on an island that is never truly stable. Sable Island is strange because it shouldn't last, yet it does, reshaped again and again by the ocean without ever fully disappearing, with majestic horses roaming its sands. From an island that's constantly being reshaped by the ocean, we move to a place reshaped almost entirely by people. The next island looks harmless at first, even friendly, but its past tells a very different story. What happened here was kept secret for decades, and the traces are still impossible to ignore. This is island number 9. Okunoshima is a small island in Japan's Seto Inland Sea, located between the main islands of Honshu and Shikoku. Today, it's known for something that seems harmless. Hundreds of rabbits roaming freely, approaching visitors without fear. That reputation hides a very different past. During the 1930s and World War II, Okunoshima was used as a secret chemical weapons facility. The island was deliberately removed from maps, and poison gas was manufactured here for military use. Workers operated under strict secrecy, often without being told exactly what they were handling, and long-term health effects followed many of them for the rest of their lives. After the war, the facilities were dismantled, records were destroyed, and the island was quietly repurposed. Over time, rabbits were introduced. The exact origin is still debated, and with no natural predators, their population exploded. Today, tourists arrive by ferry to feed and photograph the animals, often unaware of what lies beneath the surface. Ruins of gas factories, storage bunkers, and testing sites are still scattered across the island, slowly reclaimed by vegetation. Okunoshima is strange because it compresses two completely different realities into one place. A site once dedicated to chemical warfare, now transformed into one of Japan's most disarming tourist destinations, where a violent past exists alongside something almost absurdly gentle. From an island reshaped by secrecy and forgotten history, we move to a place where history never left. The final island on this list is not abandoned, protected, or preserved for science. It is actively defended. Approaching its shores can trigger an immediate and violent response, and for a very specific reason, contact is forbidden entirely. This is the final island. North Sentinel Island lies in the Bay of Bengal, part of India's Andaman Islands, but in almost every meaningful way, it exists outside the modern world. Dense forest covers the island, with no visible roads, ports, or permanent structures detectable even from satellite imagery. What makes North Sentinel unique is its people. The Sentinelese are one of the last uncontacted tribes on Earth. They have lived on the island for an estimated tens of thousands of years, maintaining a hunter-gatherer lifestyle completely isolated from global civilization. They reject all outside contact, often violently, using bows, arrows, and spears to drive away anyone who approaches. This isolation is not accidental. India strictly enforces a no-contact policy, banning travel within several kilometers of the island. The decision is based on both respect for the Sentinelese autonomy and the risk that even a simple disease could be catastrophic to a population with no immunity. There have been multiple documented attempts at contact, most of which ended badly. In 2018, an American missionary illegally attempted to land on the island and was killed shortly after reaching shore. His death reinforced why the restrictions exist and why they are enforced so aggressively. North Sentinel Island is strange not because of how it looks, but because it represents a boundary modern civilization cannot cross. A place where the outside world is neither wanted nor allowed, and where the past remains firmly in control. After all of this, one question remains. Which of these islands do you find the strangest? And would you ever want to see any of them up close? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and check out the other stuff on the channel. Thanks for watching.